The Mag 7, or the MAGA 7 as they now call it, or even the top 4 or 5, spend $500 billion a year now on CapEx, on capital expenditure, to expand AI capacity. On Chinese social media, the meme is, Trump is making China great again. The big word in the word map was uncertainty. And in uncertain times, people don't invest. People don't make decisions. People hesitate. And he who hesitates is lost. So. The Mag 7, or the MAGA 7 as they now call it, or even the top 4 or 5, spend $500 billion a year now on CapEx, on capital expenditure, to expand AI capacity. Amazon spends $100 billion a year. Google and Meta are each spending $75 billion a year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's huge. These are huge figures.
Numbers, aren't they?
Alphabet is spending $75 billion, and their ad budget is about $4 billion, right? So OPEX does not get prioritized when you're expanding at that rate. So it's interesting times, as they say.
I noticed one thing I have to ask you, because they were so dominant in the 60s, 70s, 80s, is Japan's motor industry. And also SoftBank, I believe, said to Trump some months ago, we're going to spend £500 million, in North America, helping to develop things.
I think more than that. It was $500 billion. I mean, Son San does throw out some very big numbers, and his rates of return have not been
brilliant,
have not been as great as some as he would like and others would like. No, look, numbers are thrown around in order to catch President Trump's attention. You visit the White House and you say, this is my starter for 10, and you keep going. The primary problem that Tesla has, is BYD can produce a God's Eye, which is their AV technology car, for $10,000. Now, let's say that the tariffs were 30% or 50%. Okay, that's $15,000. But last week BYD decreased their prices, announced a decrease of a third. I think it was 34%. So they are really super aggressive in terms of pricing. And, the motor manufacturers that we work with, General Motors or BMW, have to face the fact that the Chinese EVs and AVs are going to be available to consumers at lower prices, and that they better get more efficient and more effective. I mean, the only company that I've come across that has implemented AI marketing at scale is General Motors, where they basically implemented it or are implementing it across the globe with a very different marketing model, which is aimed at greater effectiveness, greater quality, and greater efficiency to deal with the Chinese EVs that are coming. Because they know that when the Chinese EVs and AVs come in, it's not just BYD. I mean, there's a multiplicity of Xiaomi and others. When they come in, they'll come in with super well-designed cars, with all the accoutrements, with all the gadgets and the extras that are needed at an extremely effective price. In that environment, you're going to go for the growth where you think it's going to be higher. And I think, to answer your question head on, North America, South America, the Middle East, and Asia, with a qualifier over China, because if you're big in China, if you're Apple or Tesla or LVMH with, 20, 25, a third of your sales in China, do you really want to be bigger given the Taiwan risk? I don't think China will invade Taiwan, but I think they will squeeze. It'll be like a boa constrictor. They'll squeeze and squeeze and squeeze without
but they're quite pragmatic, aren't they?
Pulling the military trigger. But so that those parts of the world. So in addition to China, if you're small in China, like a Unilever at 6% or 9%, a Reckitt's at 6%, or Pepsi at 3%, you want to be bigger because China's 15, 20% of the world economy. And China will always be there. Whatever the Americans think, it is a multipolar world, and, China is going to be one of the forces. In addition to China, India, obviously a big beneficiary of what's happening. Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia. Those new Asia, between Japan and Australia and New Zealand comes into its own. Now, I didn't mention Africa, too volatile for my taste, too many conflicts. I think more conflicts than we've ever had before. And I didn't mention Europe. I think Europe is in the penalty box. German fiscal headroom is greater. You know, their debt to GDP is lower. They're going to spend more on defense, or they are spending more on defense. So there may be a little bit of Germany will once again be the strong man of Europe. But France, Italy, Spain, and the UK, I think, are in doo-doo and are going to have a tougher time. The big word in the word map was uncertainty. And in uncertain times, people don't invest. People don't make decisions. People hesitate. And he who hesitates is lost. So it's difficult, very difficult.
You've always, over the years, I've always considered you one of the great barometers of economic activity because you've got tentacles out all over the world.
Everybody's entitled to one mistake.
Well, that's one way of putting it. I'm sticking with mine. So obviously, the uncertainty which you flagged up quite rightly so affects the United States initially because that's where it's triggered.
Yeah.
But of all the areas that which do you think is under the most pressure? The United States, the European Union, Asia? How do they all compare? Africa?
Well, let's sort of back up for a minute and say, you know, what maybe frame it in the context of what I think. Who knows what's going to happen? So it's very difficult to make these projections. But look, it's a period of uncertainty now. We're going to have to wait for a period of time, and it may be longer now. You know, steel tariffs have doubled. You know, over the weekend, from 25 to 50%. Things are bouncing around. You know, will the Chinese do a deal or not? You know, President Trump seems to be getting a bit frustrated with the delay, not just by the EU, but the EU has responded now, but the Chinese too. So let's assume for a minute that tariffs don't get sorted, but we know what the level is over the next 3 to 6 months. After that, I think two things happen. One is, to your point, our clients will be very selective on the geographies in which they operate. So they will look for the growth. The growth is going to be slower than we've been used to. Inflation is going to be higher because tariffs are a tax. They may be a one-time tax and it may be a one-time effect. My feeling is, you know, I was talking to somebody actually over the weekend about New York and New York prices. I mean, New York prices have leapt, and I'm a bit surprised that the American inflation indices don't show a little bit more inflation. Maybe that's to come. Maybe it's too early. And given what Trump has done, given the breach of trust, I mean, I would describe it, if there was a trust index for America now, it's pretty low. It's going to take a long time to reestablish it, maybe many presidents and many regimes. What's going to happen in the meantime is that China, I mean, this is on Chinese social media, the meme is Trump is making China great again.
I can see that.
So what this is pushing China together, unfortunately, with Russia, with North Korea, with Iran. I mean, the axis. Everybody uses that word deliberately. I mean, that axis is pushing towards the global south, to the BRICS, the next 11, and it's a simple fact that the E7, you know, which are the new economies, China, India, Brazil, etc., are bigger than the G7 in terms of GDP. And if you exclude China from the E7 and exclude America from the G7, the E6 is bigger than the G6 in GDP. So it comes back to sort of where we started the conversation. The world is changing. And you know, when you say to me, what about the UK? I'm not philosophical about it. I lament it. I think it's terrible. I think the non-dom exodus is a disaster.
I agree.
All right? I mean, not just a disaster from a loss of talent, etc. And it's not just rich people.
Attitude, isn't it?
It's kids coming out of university. If they look at, you know, if you're coming out of university and you're looking, you know, building a career, what do you think at the minute? Where do you think you should go? You know, you might have some doubts about America, but you probably think about South America. You'd probably think about Asia. You'd probably think about the Middle East.